Today is July the 13th. What does prodigal mean? Today we're going to read the parable of the prodigal son. It's interesting that we use that word, and usually we have no sense of what it actually means. Well, let's read the first part of that parable, then I'll tell you what it means. Luke 15, we're going to read 11 to 24. Jesus said there was a man who had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the wealth that will belong to me." So he divided his assets between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant region. There he squandered his wealth in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that region. He began to be in need, so he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that region, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I'll get up and go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Get the fatted calf and kill it. Let's eat and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Prodigal. What it means is extravagantly wasteful. Well, that is the definition of what this son did. He came to his father. Again, the context of this parable is the same. Jesus is eating with sinners. So in the story, the younger son goes to his father and says, "Father, give me my inheritance." The man had two sons. That means he would divide his wealth into three. The older son gets two portions. The younger son gets one portion. So he gave him a third of his wealth. And the young man went out and he wasted it. When he ran out of money, he ran out of friends. So he looked around, and the only job he could find was feeding pigs. Now, in feeding pigs, first of all, we identify that he did not go to Jewish territory. He went to Gentile territory. Apparently, wine, women, and song is better in Gentile territory. Feeding the pigs, he began to covet what the pigs were eating. Looking at where they were sleeping, he began to think, "That looks warm." Well, a person who eats with pigs, a person who sleeps with pigs, they're a pig. The son finally woke up and said to himself, "I am dying." You know what he said? Following along in these parables, "I am lost." He went back to his father to become a slave in his father's house. But when the father sees him, he receives him and he honors him. And then he says, he was dead, now he's alive. He was lost, destroyed, now he is found. Well, in the Old Testament, we have another story of two brothers who had been estranged, but who are reunited. Let's read Genesis 32 and 33.
Genesis 32 through 33, New Revised Standard Edition. Genesis 32. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he called the place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have lived with Laban as an alien and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male and female slaves, and I have sent to tell my lord, in order that I may find favor in your sight. The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people who were with him and the flocks and herds and camels into 2 companies, thinking, If Esau comes to the one company and destroys it, then the other company that is left will escape. And Jacob said, O God, my father Abraham, and God, my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, Return to your country and to your kindred, and I will do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him. He may come to kill us all, the mothers with their children. Yet you have said, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted because of their number. So he spent the night there, and from what he had with him he took and presented for his brother Esau 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milka camels and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. These he delivered into the hands of his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, Pass on ahead of me, and put a space between drove and drove. He instructed the one in the lead. When Esau my brother meets you and asks you, To whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are these ahead of you? Then you shall say, They belong to your servant Jacob. They are present sent to my lord Esau, and moreover he is behind us. He likewise instructed the 2nd and 3rd, and all who followed the droves. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you meet him. And you shall say, Moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterwards I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself spent the night in the camp. The same night he got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, Let me go, for the day is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, What is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then the man said, You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans, and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, Please tell me your name. But he said, Why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, For I have seen God face to face, yet my life is preserved. The sun rose upon him, and he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the hip socket, because he struck Jacob on the hip socket at the thigh muscle. Genesis 33, New Revised Standard Edition. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 maids. He put the maids with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on ahead of them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, Who are these with you? Jacob said, The children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the maids drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And finally Joseph and Rachel drew near and bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor with my lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please, if I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand, for truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Since you have received me with such favor, please accept my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have everything I want." So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go alongside you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. And if they are overdriven for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So Esau said, "Let me leave you with some of the people who are with me." But he said, "Why should my Lord be so kind to me?" So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built himself a house, and made booths for his cattle. Therefore the place is called Succoth. Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way to Paddan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the plot of land on which he pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohi Israel.
So here in this passage, there are some differences between Jacob returning to the house of Isaac, his father, and Esau, his brother. The prodigal son returned in poverty. Jacob returns rich, and he prepares rich gifts for his brother. But it's interesting that after he prepares the gifts, but before they are delivered, Jacob wrestles with God. It's like God is saying, "No, Jacob, your gifts are not going to earn you favor with Esau. That is something that only I can do." Then in the next chapter, there is a reconciliation between Jacob and Esau. Now, what Jesus says is that this younger brother represents the sinners that he is going to minister to. Tomorrow we'll read about the older brother and his reaction. He's upset that the sinner is received, but the father is only interested that his son was dead and now is alive. He was lost, and now he's found. So what do we do about this today? You know, it's a great day to actually reach out to your siblings if you have any. Just send them a note. Tell them how much you appreciate them. If they don't know the Lord, tell them you're praying for them. Scripture reading from the New Revised Standard Version by Emily Herrera. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below.